So let's talk about an example. So let's say that we are working on a case with a company that has a new product innovation that is used for pets. Okay, so let's say it's it doesn't matter what it is, a new leash, a food dispenser, a water bowl, doesn't matter what the product is. And the company is trying to assess the opportunity for this, and they're thinking about doing a market launch in New York City. So they want to know how many dogs are there in New York City. And by New York City, I mean the city, not the state. And we care about dogs that are owned, not stray dogs, not dogs in pet stores, like dogs that live in people's houses or apartments. And try to estimate how many dogs there are in New York City. And then we'll talk through kind of the methodology of market sizing after you guys have had a chance to kind of work with this. Okay, so sort of use your best judgment in how to estimate that. And if you don't want to put the numbers in, do a here's how I would work through it to try to get to that market size. So a couple of key things with market sizing. You have these elements of the market sizing. You have facts that you should know or information that you ought to have readily at your disposal. We call those factoids. We have assumptions that you should make that are reasonably good. And then we have estimates that frankly are wild ass guesses. Okay. And an interviewer knows they have an expectation of this, and then the final piece, you're going to have these calculations. The calculation is not your priority. The general idea with market sizing questions is that you're going to start from some type of a population. Often it's a city, it could be a state, it could be a country, it could be a region, and having that at your disposal is beneficial. And I can talk about some more techniques. Right, so the dogs are not per person, they tend to be per house. So that's where you apply kind of another piece of information. That's an I, not a plus minus, that gets you to the relevant metric that drives the number of dogs. Okay, and then what you're trying to do is you're trying to have enough layers to go from that population down to the number of dogs. You don't want too few, you don't want too many, right? Because remember, you guys are doing this very fast. So it's like, well, how do I break this down? How do I go from a big number to a smaller number? And there's some judgment, there's some logic, there's some creativity, there's some assumptions that you're going to make. And this somewhat operates like a decision tree. So when I think about it, and I'm using some of my world observation, there are people that have pets, and then there are people that don't have pets. I don't exactly know the precise number, but my best guess, if I just look around my neighborhood, it's probably a 60-40 split. So I go with the 40% side that have pets. Then I think about, and that would be an assumption, right? Because I should have some good-ish foundation. Then I'm going to think a little bit about the kinds of pets, because again, in my way of thinking about the world, not every pet is a dog. So I have a friend of mine, she has a cat. I have other people that only have dogs. We only have dogs. other people have fish. Our neighbor has a bird. So what I've decided that might make sense, the way to segment the market, and by the way, this is where marketing comes into play. How do I segment the pet owners in the market? I think there are dog people, I think there are cat people, and I think there are other. Now, there might be people that have dogs and cats. I have made an assumption to kind of ignore that fact, but I'll come back to that. So I make this estimation because I don't have any data. I'm just kind of thinking about the world. I've decided that it's also relevant to NYC, New York City, which is a very apartment-driven urban center. Cats tend to maybe be a little bit more apartment friendly. So I give cat people a little higher, I give dog people a little lower, and then people that have other kinds of pets, I've built out the rest. All right, this is an estimate. I'm just talking my way through it by way of observation. Okay, so I take the world of have pets, I multiply it times my 40%, and then I think about this a factor. I have a factor that will either increase or decrease my number of dogs. So I know that there's probably some cat people who also have a dog. And then also some people have more than one dog. So I've made another kind of guesstimate here, an estimate, that it's maybe not one dog per family. It's some 1 plus. And so that got me to 640,000 dogs in New York City.